in the beginning. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the deep of the earth. Empty, but not without purpose. For over the deep, God was preparing to create something new, something wonderful. He spoke, and there was light, the sun to rule the day and the moon to rule the night. He separated the sky and the sea, both blue canvases for the explosion of color in the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. All created to reveal the beauty and the majesty of the Creator. And then, emerging from the water and stretching to the sky, land appeared, and with it all the creatures in a vast array of kinds, from tree crawlers to earth diggers to graceful leapers and walking mountains, all on display to declare the wonder and the power of the Creator. And then, one final stroke to finish the frame, one final note to fill the score, one final breath to complete creation, a heartbeat, humanity. And it was good, very good. And then the Creator rested. The garden, the way things are supposed to be, had now been perfectly established, everything in place, the rhythms and patterns laid out, the blueprint for life clearly seen. Only one question remained, like low-hanging fruit on a tree. How would this story end? We all entered this world with an awareness of the way the world should be. Full of anticipation and hope as a child, we imagined the world the way that we think it could be and should be. This is what the Bible calls the garden. But what happens when the ideal, or the way things are supposed to be, crashes into reality? The truth is, if you're to be honest with yourself, this world isn't the way it is supposed to be. What do you do then? When I was in high school, I really wanted to impress this girl. And I tried all kinds of things and nothing was working. And so I was getting a bit desperate. And so I decided that I'd have one last shot at it. And so I invited her to one thing that I thought I was pretty good at, soccer, a soccer game. And she agreed to come, and so she did. And if you've ever been to a high school soccer game, it's not exactly the most exciting thing you've ever seen. A bunch of guys kicking a ball back and forth, and it was boring, 0-0, no score, until near the end of the game. And I noticed that she was kind of bored, but I got my opportunity, my moment. One of my teammates broke free on the wing, and I broke free of my man. And he laid up a beautiful cross. It was perfect. The goalie was out of position. My man was out of position. There was nothing between me and that goal than just executing what I'd done so many times before. And so I jumped into the air with great anticipation. And I had a thought. My thought was, well, what if I scored the greatest goal in all of human history and she doesn't even see? Then all of this would have been in vain. And so I thought, I'll just take one quick glance. One quick peek, just to make sure. And so I did. And sure enough, she was there watching. She was looking intently as I jumped into the air. But in that moment, I forgot to look at my teammates. I forgot to look at the goalie. I forgot to look at the ball. Worst of all, I forgot to look at the goalpost. And when I turned back, I was on a course of no return and landing face first into the post. I broke my nose. I crumpled to the ground, blood everywhere, trying not to cry because that's just not cool. The ball went sailing harmlessly over my head. We didn't score a goal. We didn't win the game. And I, on my hands and knees, looked up into the crowd, and there she was, laughing. Yes, the sun set, the white horse rode off, and nobody was on it. What do you do when the ideal, the way you think or know intuitively the way the world should be, doesn't match up with your reality? See, I grew up in Thailand, and it was in the time of many civil wars. And the civil war in Cambodia was especially bloody. Millions of people were massacred by the Khmer Rouge. And so many fled into Thailand trying to escape that war-torn country. And so I can remember as a child seeing and feeling the impact of a world the way it's not supposed to be. Disease and famine and war. It's what you're reminded of every time you turn on the TV and watch the news or the radio in your car and you hear it. This is not the way the world is supposed to be. And then I remember going through school and having some experiences that shattered again the ideal in my life. I had a friend whose older sibling committed suicide. And I saw as that friend tried to put the pieces together with their family on what had happened and why and how they had failed. I remember my dad taking me to a Thai prison. Not to leave me there. Probably wanted to, but to visit a young guy who had been caught trafficking drugs. And in Thailand at that time, it was a capital offense. And so he was going to be there for the rest of his life because of one mistake. I remember friends around me feeling the impact of divorce and feeling abandoned and rejected by one of their parents. The ones who were supposed to protect and care for them were now no longer there, off living another life, leaving them to feel like they had done something wrong and were unworthy for some reason of their parents' love. But these realities weren't just global and they weren't just in my sphere of influence. I started to realize that there was something wrong inside of me. There was a deep anger that I didn't know where it came from, or I didn't even know its source. All I knew was that anything would set it off, and it would manifest itself in intense violence. I saw in myself early greed, wanting things that weren't mine, that I didn't even need, and yet this insatiable desire to have them. I saw pride. I saw myself beginning to separate myself from other people, putting them in categories and deciding who was good enough and who was not good enough based on my criteria. And so, what do you do when the ideal, the way the world should be, the way relationships around you should be, the way you should be, doesn't meet up with the reality of your circumstance? The Bible goes on to say that in this garden that God created to be perfect, there was a tree. And it was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I've thought a lot about what that was and what it meant. And I think it's what makes us unique as human beings. I think the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents our ability to be conscious, aware of what is good, and the choice not to do it. Whether it's by omission, you know the good and you choose not to do it, or by commission, you see something that you know isn't right and you do it anyway. And in this tree, we're introduced to a monster. It's a serpent. We're not sure how it got there or why it's there necessarily, but we know that it's there waiting to pounce on humanity with a lie that sinks deep inside and corrupts from the inside out. And this lie takes many forms. One of the forms that this lie takes is, I don't need anyone. It looks like this: I'm better off on my own. I can handle this. I won't tell anyone else, tell me what to do. I'm on my own. The problem with this lie is it leads to isolation and insecurity. Another form of this lie is the lie that says, I can do whatever I want. It doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt anybody. I can take it even if I have to do so by force. I deserve this. But the lie manifests itself in taking even when it's at the expense of another. Or the greatest lie of all, I am God. Now, we'd never say it that way because it just sounds crass, but the truth is we believe that we're it. We're the center. We're all that matters, and it doesn't matter what I do because I will be in control. And is this not the source of quarrels and fights and wars? And so the fruit looked so good, so enticing. Just take it. You deserve it. You need it. It won't hurt anybody. You could be your own God. And so we took the bite and we allowed poison to fill our mouths, and evil entered the world. You see, we thought we were reaching for freedom. We thought we were reaching for that thing that would satisfy, that would bring us meaning and value and purpose, only to realize that it was attached to a chain. And like Snow White taking that bite out of the apple, poison filled us, and the consequences were deep. Anger, envy, hatred, unforgiveness, loneliness, despair. And we found our hands turning into fists, our tongues into swords, and our eyes a window into the darkness that was now inside of us. For we realized we weren't who we were supposed to be. And we learned the hard way that if you believe the lie, you die. And so the Bible uses words like lost and broken and empty, a slave weighed down. And we all felt it the first time we broke a rule, or we lied to get something to our own advantage, or we used our words to tear someone else down so that the attention was deflected off of our own insecurities and weaknesses. And like Eddie Brock in the latest Marvel movie Venom, Venom says to him, "We will take whatever we want." But to find ourselves consumed in the darkness. Romans 3:23 says it this way: for all have sinned, all of us, and we all fall short of God's glory. We all fall short of who we were created and designed to be. And Romans 6:23 reminds us that the wages, the consequence of this choice is always death. The death of a dream, the death of an ideal. Not just a physical death, but an emotional death, a relational death, a spiritual death. So what does God do? I know that the rumor out there is that God is full of wrath and anger and hatred to be poured out on the world for our mistakes, but that's not the story. In the story, God does something unbelievable, unexpected. He makes a promise. Into our brokenness, he promises that one day someone would come who would put the pieces back together, who would resist the lies, for he would be truth. He would say, "I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life." And the promise was that the serpent would bite his heel. He would experience the same venom, the same poison that you and I experience, and yet he would be untainted by it. For he would be the truth, and he would crush the serpent's head. I got thinking about this, and I got thinking about serpents and snakes. And I grew up in Thailand, and there were a lot of them. As a matter of fact, I knew people personally who were bitten by snakes, some who were even killed by snakes. We had snakes around our house. We had snakes in our house. One year, we had 4 snakes in our house. That was our record. I had friends wake up with cobras coiled on their stomach. I had adders underneath my stove. I had venomous snakes of all kinds, and so you always had to be incredibly cautious. It was so dangerous that there was a snake called the 2-step snake, because that's how long you had to live after it bit you. So the Thai and many across the world who battle venomous snakes came up with a solution, an antidote. And here's how you do it. You milk the snake. Now, they don't have an udder. That'd be awkward anyway. But you milk the snake, you expose its glands, and through its fangs you draw by massaging the poison out of it into a glass. And then you take that venom that would kill a human being, and you inject it into a mammal who's bigger and stronger, usually a horse. And that horse is able to fight that poison, and its blood system creates antibodies. And you take the blood from that horse, and you take the antibodies out of that, and you inject it into the infected victim, and they live. And this is exactly what happened at Easter. The reason we are so passionate about this story is because we needed someone greater, bigger, stronger than us, someone who was not tainted by the lies, but who was truth. And so Jesus came into this world, and he didn't just talk about it, he lived it. He showed us a totally different way of looking at the world, that you didn't have to let the lies consume you, enslave you, that you could love even your enemies. And you could be compassionate even when it cost you a great amount. That you could learn to live with purpose when you followed the way that is truth. See, he came to open the door to our prison cell, and then he said, "Come, follow me." That's why in John 3:16, he reminds us of this powerful truth that God so loved the world. He so loved you. He saw you in your brokenness, tied to your lie, broken by it, by this world and the harsh realities that we all have to face. And he said, God so loved you that he sent Jesus. Whoever would believe the truth, the antidote. See, if you're a victim of poison, you got to take the antidote. If you'd believe that, his lifeblood would transform you and you would live. And so what did God do on Easter? He fought our battle for us. And he fought with the most powerful weapon of all, his truth.
From the very beginning, there was tension. Even before everything went wrong, there was a threat lurking in the shadows, a weed in the garden, a snake in the grass. Just one touch. They weren't breaking any laws. What damage would it cause? Surely they would not be killed. Why would God deny them the thrill of the chase? How could he refuse them just one taste? As the juices flowed, total sensory overload, and for a second reality was hard to reckon. Was this death or a dream, or something in between? For the humans, it was the end of life in the garden, but as for the serpent's crimes, there would be no pardon. Cursed for his savage bloodlust, condemned to crawl in the dust. The serpent wryly smiled. He defiled their innocence, and the consequences were imminent. His plan had been perfect. Infect their thoughts, and they will reject their God. But his plan had been fatally flawed. That was just the beginning. Suddenly, the world was spinning out of control, a prison with no parole. They had to get used to life on the outside, the sweat of hard labor, neighbor rising against neighbor, sibling rivalry fueled by jealousy and madness, murder and malice, grief and shame, conquerors and slaves, floods and famine, never before imagined violence and lust. It was humanity that seemed to be crawling in the dust, chasing that fork-tongued liar, enticed by unquenchable desire and an insatiable appetite for destruction. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, the serpent and his curse returned. As he wormed his way into the camp, he wasn't alone. Accompanied by a whole brood of poisonous vipers, hundreds of fiery helpers, one person after another was attacked. The impact was severe. Panic and fear for the few that survived, while so many of them painfully died. They apologized as quickly as they could. We promised to be good. groveling in the dust, just take away these snakes from us. Moved with compassion, God ordered them to fashion a replica of the snake and hang it on a stake, promising everyone that would look to it would be saved. The serpent's plot had once again been stopped, but he was still out there, slithering in the dark. He'd left his mark, winding his way through generations of humanity, bringing calamity and tragedy. Until one day, emerging from the ruins, Jesus, who set out with a plan so ancient he would stand up to temptation, carrying a new revelation of love. One night, under the moonlight of Gethsemane, the Savior and the enemy, pure evil and pure grace, would finally meet face to face. The serpent and the Son, how fitting that they should meet here in the garden. Unguarded and alone, the serpent crawled out from under a stone, waiting for his moment, ready for his opponent.
Strike one.
The sound of voices, the glow of torches, a familiar face, a kiss.
Strike two.
Arrested and bound, mocking voices and a mock trial, spewing false claims, holding him in chains, rods and whips and lying lips.
Strike three.
The verdict, the sentencing, the bloodthirsty crowds calling for death. Crucify him. You could hear the serpent's hiss in every bystander's voice. You could hear his rattle as the Roman soldiers dragged him away. And then, the final strike. Nails like fangs driven deep into his hand and feet. The serpent had found the man's Achilles heel. Love. The ultimate weakness, thought the snake. It had been his final mistake. A giant stone now marked the final resting place of his failed revolution, stamped out by execution. And with Jesus dead, the ancient prophecy that had hung over his head had finally passed. He'd been able to outwit and outlast. As the serpent reveled in self-praise, he realized Jesus had already been dead for 3 days. Recalling the ancient prophecy from a world so distant, he knew in an instant whose foot was on his head. Jesus was not dead anymore. He had come back to settle the age-old score. In victory over darkness and death, returning from dust back to dust, the serpent was crushed and defeated, his power depleted, the snake prince unseated from his self-made throne. Victory now in the hands of a merciful God who came to conquer the serpent we sometimes still feel inside. But don't be fooled, he's all hiss and no bite, for the stone is rolled away. Jesus has defeated the grave. And anytime he tries to show his face, we remind him of how he was disgraced. And when we're tempted to join him on our bellies in the dust, we remember that God won the war for us. So when we fall, we can stand up again with confidence for the fight, saying, "Serpent, where is your bite? Evil, where is your fight? O sin, where are your teeth? Death, where is your sting? For Jesus is our King."
To shame, the stone was rolled away. His perfect love could not be overcome. Now, death, where is your sting? Our resurrected King has rendered you defeated. Forever He
And so today we celebrate that truth came into this world, and the lies that try to crush you and I were placed upon him. They put him in a tomb, in a grave. They rolled a stone across that grave, thinking it was over, that there would never be the ideal again. But the lies cannot destroy the truth. And on that third day, truth emerged from that grave victorious. Why? So we could walk in his way. We could experience his truth. And so this is what we celebrate at Easter together. Thank you. You may be seated. And so, if you're watching online, I don't know what brought you to this moment, but the reason we did this is that you could hear and know and experience something. If you're here and a friend brought you and you were gracious enough to come, thank you so much. That means a lot to us. But the reason we're so passionate, and maybe you're thinking, these people are a little crazy. You're right. Because that's what good news does. When something good happens to you, have you ever seen someone who has a baby for the first time? Especially grandparents, they go crazy. They take like 7 million pictures and they think you're interested in every one of them, right? When something good happens to you, you want everyone to know it. And so you were invited here today. You are watching online today because we want you to know something, that you don't have to be a slave to the lies anymore. You can be free. And we don't want you just to know it, we want you to experience it. Because we've experienced it. And it's changed us. When I was 17 years old, I remember standing in a house with all the lights turned off. No one was around, and I didn't want to be seen. Because I'd listened to the whisper, the lie of the serpent, telling me that I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything, that every mistake I made was going to go punished, that I would always be alone and no one would ever really love me. And I remember in the darkness of that room, this battle was raging inside of me. Because as a child, I had heard this story, the story you're hearing today. But in that moment, I needed to apply it. It's one thing to be bitten by the snake and to feel the sting and the pain of its poison. It's another thing entirely to receive the antidote. You have to receive it. So I remember in that darkened room, admitting that I was not who I was supposed to be. It was painful. I had to put aside some of my pride, and I had to say, I'm not who I'm supposed to be, and I know it. And then I had to believe something different. See, the truth is everybody has faith. There's nobody who doesn't have faith. You had faith when you sat down that chair would hold you. You had faith when you got in that car that it wasn't gonna fall apart on your way here. You have faith today when you put that food in your mouth, it's gonna taste good. You have faith. We all have faith. But I decided to put my faith in truth. Not the idea of truth and not religion. This isn't about those things. It's not about dogma. As a matter of fact, sometimes the serpent uses that more effectively than anything else. Look at what religion has done. It's not about that. It's about the truth of who Jesus is and what he did for me. So I just believed it. I believed that I could be forgiven. I believed that I could have a new life. That yes, it meant that I'd have to die to some stuff. I'd have to take the old ugly things and I'd have to put them in the grave, but that just like a shoot, a tender shoot pushes its way out of the soil in spring, something new could be born in me. That yes, the old roots had to be cut out, but something greater would be in their place. And then I just committed my life to doing my best to live in that way. And so for me, the truth is I'm no longer alone. Even in a world that sometimes rejects me, people who don't understand me, I'm never gonna be alone because I have a God who's fighting for me. A God who on the cross said, Father, forgive him. he doesn't know what he's doing and loved me anyway. And I'm living with purpose. I realize that God came in to bring order to my chaos, and then he allows me to live in this world to bring order to the chaos I see around me. That the only way we're gonna stop war is by loving even our enemies. The only way that we're gonna stop famine is when we put aside our own agenda and we are compassionate. It's gonna cost us something, but it brings order to the chaos. And I get to live in that, and that's why Jesus, before he was killed, said, "Not my will, but yours be done." And then I have this hope. This world sometimes is hopeless, isn't it? Sometimes I'm hopeless, but I have a God who keeps his promises. The greatest truth about the Easter and the resurrection is that God keeps his promises. Over 300 times, thousands of years before Jesus came, it was promised he would be this and do that with incredible precision. And so I trust his promises. And he promises that he'll make all things new in me and in you. Does it mean I'm perfect? Oh, please. Just ask my wife and kids. No, because it's not about me. It's about him and what he's doing in me. And so I began this journey of discovery again. My eyes were opened, yes, to the ugliness, but I could see the beauty. I could see hope and reconciliation. I learned to forgive. I learned to love again. And that is the most powerful truth of all. And so Jesus gave us a new name. I don't know what you've been called all your life. Maybe like me, you were called stupid or loser, failure, reject, unloved, ugly. Whatever name this lie this world gives you, the serpent hisses at you. The truth is that on the cross, that lie was crushed, and in its place was a truth. And here's the powerful truth. You are an overcomer. If you trust in God, you're an overcomer. That even the grave isn't gonna hold you down. You're an overcomer. And it doesn't matter how big the circumstance, how overwhelming the situation. It doesn't matter how large the obstacle. There's a God who is greater. And in a world of poison, he is the life that we need. And so in his blood shed on the cross, it was the antidote that you can live in truth too. So we've been praying for you. Maybe we didn't know your name, maybe we didn't know your story, but we were praying for you that today you would know you can be an overcomer. That no matter what situation brought you into this place, no matter what pain you're carrying, no matter what lie you've believed, no matter what choices you have made and the consequences that have been chaotic in your life because of it, there is hope. You can overcome. Not in your own strength, but in the strength of the one who is greater, bigger, stronger, higher, who is the way, the truth, and the life. And so today, we celebrate the one who overcame. And in that gave us the greatest gift of all, that we can overcome too. That is the story of Easter.
We invite you to stand as we sing this last song. It's almost an anthem to this morning.
Now the darkness fades into new beginnings as we lift our eyes to a hope beyond. All creation waits with an expectation to declare the reign of the Lord our God. Here we go. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for everything there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. Now the silence breaks in the name of Jesus. To the heavens cry, let the earth respond. All creation shouts with the voice of triumph. shall reign forever. Let's sing that together. Here we go. He shall reign forever. Strongholds now surrender for the Lord. Our God has overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus, our defender. He is Lord, and He has overcome. He shall reign forever. Strongholds now surrender for the Lord. Our God has overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus, our defender. He is Lord, and He has overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave. And for the risen one is overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. For every fear, there's an empty grave. For the risen one is overcome. Oh, yes, He is overcome. He is risen.
Yeah,
Oh, that was good.
that was awesome.
If you'd like to take a seat,
Oh,
you've all
just
done very
wonderful.
well standing for that
So
time.
good.
Oh, what an amazing morning together.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope that you were inspired today by the Easter story and by the message that Pastor Bill shared. And there are really three things that we want you to take away. One is to acknowledge that maybe the lies that you've believed in your life, maybe the lies that have been over your life, maybe for a long time. Acknowledge that. Second is to believe that Jesus shows us a new way to live, and He actually modeled it through His life. And third is to commit. Commit to not walking that journey alone, but walking it with others, walking it with those around you today.
And you know, there are a couple of ways that you can do that. One of them starting next week. Next week here at Central, 10:30 a.m., we have a course called Alpha starting. Now, Alpha is an 8-week course. It's designed to be an open, honest, completely unbiased environment where you can bring life's biggest questions to wrestle them out with people from all different walks of life. So if you've got questions about faith or life or meaning or God, come to that space with those questions. Did you know that over 23 million people around the world in over 169 different countries have tried Alpha, have participated in an Alpha course? So why not come along and be one of them?
Absolutely. And next week, we also are starting a brand new series called The Problem with God. Check out this quick promo video.
Hasn't our study of science disproved the existence of God finally? We know when the universe began. 15 billion years ago. Big Bang. All time, all energy, all space, all matter in an instant. And everything came into existence. Hence, we don't need God. Is that true? I was raised in a staunch atheist household. We never owned a Bible. We never went to church. First time I went to church, I was 19. I thought that the Bible was ancient and outdated. I thought there were so many hypocritical people who claimed to be Christians that there's no way I could ever believe this. I thought there was this history of the church where they burned witches and did all these awful things. There was a ton of issues that I had against Christianity. I thought science had disproven God. I thought God was anti-sex. I thought the evil and suffering that I saw in the world meant that a loving, powerful God doesn't exist. I thought that the Bible was ancient and outdated. Horus, Mithras, Dionysus, Krishna, all of them predate Jesus, and all of them have the same characteristics. Born on December 25th, crucified, raised from the dead on the third day, did miracles, walked on water, fed 5,000 people, called the Lamb of God, the light of the world. Jesus is just a copycat. Don't you know that? So you're saying there's a place that people go, and if they don't believe the right things, they go and they burn there in flames forever and ever and ever, and God sends them there to do this? And you want me to believe in that? So what are the top 10 skeptical challenges that people wage against Christianity? This book is an exploration of the answers I found that actually reframe all of those issues to show that Christianity is not only the most truthful, but the most hopeful in the marketplace of ideas.
Oh yeah, that's my kind of sermon series. I still have so many big questions, and I'm so excited to wrestle them out together. I think it's going to be great. Yep. Now, before we leave this place together today, there have been hundreds of amazing volunteers who have put their time and energy and love into making this whole thing happen. Can we give them a round of applause to say thank you? Yeah, you guys are amazing.
Absolutely. Now with that, and as you go, we bless you with the truth that there is a way back to the garden, back to the way we were designed to live.
Yeah, and we bless you with the truth that you no longer need to be a slave to the lies that this world might try and tell you.
We bless you with the truth that Jesus came into this world and shattered the lies and showed us a new way to live.
Yeah, so live in his freedom, the freedom found in his death and his resurrection.
And so we bless you now in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter.
Happy